Just throw your hands in the air and wave them like you really do care. And if you're ready to expand your mind tonight, somebody say nothing. Love it. Love it.
Thanks to Vlad, tensions with Russia are on the rise again. First, he invaded Ukraine, then he sent warplanes into Syria, and now Russia is attacking someplace Americans care about, the internet. The internet. The internet.
Could Russia be planning an attack on undersea cables that connect global internet?
Russian ships and submarines lurking near undersea cables that carry almost all of the world's internet.
Google and Facebook join forces on undersea data cable. The network of deep-sea Pacific Rim cables that help connect the web and keep it global is about to get bigger, with a little help from Google and Facebook. The deep-sea Pacific Light Cable Network will stretch across the Pacific Ocean between Hong Kong and Los Angeles. The cable will use new fiber optics to transmit large quantities of data, forming the first direct deep-sea cable network between the two cities.
The alarming increase in space junk that is accumulating around the Earth could trigger a political crisis and armed conflict, as it poses the greatest danger to military satellites. In a report published in the journal Acta Astronautica, scientists at the Russian Academy of Sciences in Moscow argue that the threat of space debris constitutes a special political danger because the owner of the impacted satellite can hardly quickly determine the real cause of the accident.
Normal fibers transmit data on the C-band. The new fibers will send data in both the C and L bands, which developer TE Subcom says effectively doubles the bandwidth available.
Unexplained failures of defense satellites could be explained either by unregistered collision with space debris or by an intentional attack by an enemy nation. In the report published, the scientists found that there are about 23,000 pieces of debris that are longer than 10 centimeters, about 4 inches. They estimate that there are about 500 million debris ranging from 1 to 10 centimeters and trillions of smaller fragments. These fragments pose serious threats to satellites and spacecraft at a combined speed of more than 30,000 miles per hour.
The cable will be able to handle up to 120 terabits per second. Google says that's enough bandwidth for 80 million concurrent video conferences between Hong Kong and Los Angeles. When it's completed in 2018, the cable network will span some 12,800 kilometers between the cities. Facebook and Google have teamed with TE Subcom and Chinese company Pacific Light Data Communication to develop the Trans-Pacific Cable.
The entire internet is carried along these cables.
First of all, what is the internet doing underwater?
As tensions rise between the United States and Russia, mutual suspicion has reached a long dormant high. In October, the U.S. accused Russia of significantly increased activity along communication cables on the ocean floor. Wiretapping or cutting the cables altogether could have far-reaching and disastrous consequences. So we wanted to know, just how much damage could Russia do by cutting undersea cables? First off, chances are high you're watching this video thanks to undersea cables, especially if you live outside of the United States. Undersea cables deliver up to 99% of international communications. The other 1% is served by satellites, but they are considerably slower. Across the ocean floor, there are reportedly 278 cables in service, connecting every continent on Earth besides Antarctica. Today, these cables transmit phone calls, internet data, and other forms of digital traffic at a rate of up to 80 terabytes per second. The longest cable connects Western Europe to Australia and East Asia and is nearly 25,000 miles long. But these cables haven't always been the fiber optic powerhouses they are today. The first submarine cables were laid in the 1850s and used to transmit telegrams. Over the past century and a half, those lines have been repeatedly upgraded and repaired to connect the world and provide the basis for a more global community. The problem is that because these cables are thousands of miles long and run across the ocean floor, it's almost impossible impossible to keep an eye on them, which is why the U.S. is so concerned about Russia's activities. Of course, cutting an important cable would be difficult to deal with, but not unsolvable. Cables are regularly damaged accidentally by passing ships, broken by earthquakes, and even torn open by sharks. In 2007, more than 50 repairs were made in the Atlantic Ocean alone. Still, during the Cold War, Russia was repeatedly accused of intentionally breaking communications cables. This would have been in violation of the Convention for Protection of Submarine Telegraph Cables. This 1884 treaty made it illegal to damage undersea cables and even provided a way for ships which inadvertently snagged a cable to seek compensation for a lost anchor or fishing net. But what the U.S. may fear more than Russia cutting a cable is Russia wiretapping it. This fear is so great because the U.S. already did exactly that to Russia in the early 1970s. The project, codenamed Operation Ivy Bells, saw the National Security Agency successfully place a listening device on a Russian undersea cable. It stayed in place for nearly a decade, monitoring sensitive communication. Undersea cables are integral to modern-day communications. In 2008, damaged cables cut off internet access for 75 million people in the Middle East.
Last time I checked, I'm not supposed to get my computer wet. Second, if you asked me how the internet travels from continent to continent, I would have said satellites or lasers, or honestly, I probably would have just said the internet. And what happened to the cloud?
This is a Business Insider, okay? This has nothing to do with flat Earth. It has nothing to do with satellites whatsoever. All information, the whole world grid is by underwater cables.
What happened to the cloud?
Satellite. Satellite is a very useless concept, okay? If you go into engineering and you look at the designs of satellites, you will understand how ridiculous it actually is. The satellites are floating around going 17,500 miles an hour just to stay in orbit with the Earth. They have wingspans, they have everything. A lot of things would rip apart. Now I'm going to show you how all of this Google Earth, all of this everything is by drones. Okay, these are drones. They are able to go 17,000 feet into the air, into the sky. You cannot see them, and they do everything. Okay, they will show you the Earth. They'll show you everything. Google Earth is from that, and I'm going to be showing you that. And you need to really understand that 99% of all international data is through these cables. That means if satellites did exist, that would be 1% of all international data.
What happened to the cloud?
So I don't know how people are getting this confused. So if you need to do more research, do more research, but there is no need for satellites.
I was told there was a cloud. Remember, hey, let's put that in the cloud. It was like the internet was a vapor of information that circles the earth, and your computer was like a ladle that scooped out what you needed.
And they keep talking about going back, but they talk about going back in 2020. Why go back in 2020 when you could just... That's the other problem. They don't have the telemetry data from the Apollo 11. Isn't that like the most important data? Isn't that like the most important thing? A huge technological achievement. They landed a man on the moon, brought him back, and they're missing the telemetry data? 14,000 something reels?
They're missing a lot of that stuff. Was not
because you can't fake it.
But it turns out the internet is actually underwater because these cables carry more than 95% of daily internet communications, and U.S. intelligence worries that in times of tension or conflict, Russia might resort to severing them. It would be the biggest disruption to your internet service since your upstairs neighbor put a password on his Wi-Fi. Okay? Try his dog's name. Try his dog's name with like the O's and zeros. And I've got a serious question here. If our enemies can attack our internet at the bottom of the ocean, why did we put Osama bin Laden down there?
Marconi sent a message across the Atlantic over, 100 years ago. And all technologies were well established and working fine using only ground-based operations. We were able to transmit through the atmosphere and skip signals off of the firmament, whatever that is, to the other side of the earth using ham radios.
And when they decided to put the internet in the tubes under the sea, did everyone forget that crabs have scissors for hands? I don't...
This is the next generation of surveillance. For the first time, we actually have permission from the government to show the basic capabilities. It is important for the public to know that some of these capabilities exist.
On the moon, there's no atmosphere. The meteorites rain down on everything. On anybody who happens to be there, any equipment on the surface. Had astronauts gone to the moon, they would have been pelted and pierced by micrometeorites traveling up to 30,000 miles per hour. One wonders why they were able to get such perfect photographs on the moon when obviously micrometeorites could have gone right through the Hasselblad cameras and the film.
Engineer Yanis Antoniadis designed the new sensor, known as Argus. With 1.8 billion pixels, it's the world's highest resolution camera. Argus fits inside this pod that attaches to the belly of a UAV. But because much of the work is classified, we can't see the sensor itself.
Because we are not allowed to expose some of the pieces that make up the sensors, so you get to look at pretty plastic curtains.
Also known as Wide Area Persistent Stare, Argus is the equivalent of having up to 100 predators look at an area the size of a medium-sized city at once. This image was taken 17,500 feet above Quantico, Virginia, and covers 15 square miles.
This whole image is at a very, very fine resolution. So if we wanted to know what is going on in any spot along this image, say near this building at this intersection, we can generate a moving image that shows what's going on in the area.
Simply by touching the screen, Antoniadis has opened up a window showing a detailed area, while still maintaining the broader context.
And everything that is a moving object is being automatically tracked. The color boxes represent that the computer has recognized the moving objects. You can see individuals crossing the street. You can see individuals walking in parking lots. There's actually enough resolution to be able to see the people waving their arms or walking around, what kind of clothes they wear. And you could pick the location of where you produce these images anywhere in the entire field of view.
Antoniades can open up to 65 windows at once and can see objects as small as 6 inches on the ground.
From even 17,500 feet, the white thing that you see flying around is a bird.
Argus streams live to the ground and also stores everything, 1 million terabytes of video a day, which is the equivalent of 5,000 hours of high-definition footage.
So you can go back and say, I would like to see what happened at this particular location 3 days, 2 hours, 4 minutes ago, and it would actually show you exactly what happened as if you were watching it live.
To create the world's highest definition camera, Antoniades needed to design a new imaging chip. But DARPA, the project's funder, wanted to move fast and keep costs down. So he borrowed technology that most people have in their pockets.
Inside this cell phone, okay, we find a tiny little camera. So if you were to take off the majority of it, you'd be left with an imaging chip. If you were to take 368 of this and make a big mosaic out of them and start shooting images, now you have Argus.
Unlike the Predator camera that limits field of view, Argus melds together video from each of its 368 chips to create a 1.8 billion pixel video stream. This makes it possible to zoom in and still see tremendous detail. Whether Argus has been deployed in the field is classified.
I'm not at liberty to discuss plans with the government, but if we had our choice, we would like Argus to be over the same area 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's not very easily achievable with manned platforms. This is where UAVs come in, and they're absolutely the perfect platform.
Argus may be mounted on an armed UAV like the Predator, a long-range platform like the giant Global Hawk, or a development craft called the Solar Eagle that may someday stay aloft for years at a time.
The U.S. Air Force right now has the ability to archive every...
And if the Russians do cut the information pipeline, we'd be looking at a deep-sea internet spill. Then we'd have to scrub all that data off the Pelicans. And Russia itself might not realize that this would hurt them too.
That's why we're not, where's the resistance? Where's the resistance against?
Okay,
if they cut us off from the internet, if they cut us off from the internet, how can we order their bulk vodka? Or their Russian brides? Or their imitation boner pills, which we need because of all the vodka we drank before we ordered the Russian bride? Okay, here's a pro tip. That's not her brother. Don't let Yergi move in with you.
Nothing.
What happened to the cloud?
Walking round the room. It don't hardly make no sound. Walking round the room. Coming back from your house. Walking round the room. Walking round the room. Bye.